I'd like to point your attention to that beautiful Unitarian church across the street. Well, St. Anne's was right around the corner. You know, Brooklyn is 70 square miles and has 400 churches. Brooklyn is also known as the land of churches. Over to the left here, this beautiful home built in 1844. See how high the stairs are? Well, they were built so high because when they built the house, there was no street there was just dirt. So you had to build their living room high so that the dirt from the street didn't get into your house. So again, I want you to notice that second entrance downstairs. That leads to a very small, tiny apartment with maybe 7-foot ceilings and a little outdoor space. That's called a garden apartment. It's the most sought after living in Brooklyn. When the house was built, that's where the servants lived, because it didn't matter if the dirt from the street got into the cook's house. So where the cook and the butler lived have become the most exclusive living in Brooklyn Heights. Now, this building over here on the left is a little newer, 1888. I want to draw your attention up there to that beautiful Tiffany glass. Up above the glass, you're going to see a face etched in the stone. That is not an Egyptian goddess, that's the original owner of the home. The absolute highest status you could have in Dutch culture was to carve your face on the front door. We brag today with our Mercedes-Benzes. They carved their face on the front door. Now, interesting, right down here. After World War II, this was turned into a rooming house. Right down in that basement apartment, a fellow moved in with a typewriter and some ideas, and for all we know, the concept of the death of a salesman was born right in that basement. Yes, that was Arthur Miller's home right after World War II. Part of the Bohemian movement when artists started flooding to Brooklyn because the rent was so cheap and it was so close to New York City. Well, we're here on Henry and Pierpont Street. Isn't it beautiful? Right behind me is the Bear Mansion. Herman Bear was the wealthiest industrialist that lived in Brooklyn Heights. He and his family were passengers of the Titanic. They actually survived. They survived the Titanic, they didn't survive the Depression. They lost everything. They lost their home. Brooklyn Heights was devastated by the Depression, economically, actually. That house was sold. I'm sorry to tell you, it became a house of ill repute with ladies of the evening. Later on, the Catholic Church bought it, and it became a monastery until the 1960s. You see, Brooklyn always tries to stay in balance. So we're back on Montague Street, the Times Square of Brooklyn Heights, full of shops and stores, and of course, many, many, many real estate offices. Straight over there, to the left, I want you to see the very first commercial Haagen-Dazs store anywhere in the United States. It opened up in November of 1976. Why do I tell you that? Because Haagen-Dazs ice cream came from the Bronx, New York. A guy named Reuben and Rose, he used to deliver ice pops when he was a kid in a horse-drawn wagon. He met Rose, she inspired him to make Haagen-Dazs. The air pump broke while they were making it. The ice cream came out too thick. Rose would get dressed in her Sunday best, give out free samples. Haagen-Dazs was born. And then in 1983, the Pillsbury Corporation bought all their recipes for $70 million.